Hello everybody, I'm Mariette from At My Table and I'm going to be cooking with you. We're making a few dishes. We're going to start with a few cooking steps that I've put out for you on paper as well. We're going to start with a homemade naan bread that we use yeast in, and then we're going to go over to a few other dishes like a soup and some dipping sauces to go alongside. But to start with our homemade bread or naan bread, I've got flour, obviously measuring spoon, some olive oil, lukewarm water for the yeast to bloom. The hot water doesn't work, it kills the yeast, so the bread won't proof. And then some salt, some sugar, and we're just going to leave that aside for about an hour to allow it to proof and rise nicely. So to start with this, we need half a cup of lukewarm water, and then some sugar. I do this by hand usually, but I'll use my measuring spoons today. And lukewarm water also helps the sugar to dissolve. I prefer using caster sugar, it's finer, although normal white sugar will also work. That's the sugar, that's the water, and then the yeast. A normal 10-gram packet of yeast is what the recipe calls for. And we just sprinkle the yeast on top. You'll notice that the yeast becomes frothy. So just leave it for a few minutes. Once it's frothy, we can start adding the flour and then start mixing. We're making the bread today by hand. Normally, you can use a blender or a mixer. That's also fine, but we're going to mix it by hand to accommodate everyone and to get everybody's hands dirty. to the flour. And salt works on taste. I like salt. I try not to add too much. And then just give that a stir. And then add that to the yeast mixture. Try and combine that in a little bit, and then I'm going to add some buttermilk. You can in this recipe also use yogurt, both are equally good, and then just some olive oil also works nice. About half a cup of buttermilk. The idea is just to mix it through nicely and then obviously tip it out and then start kneading. The kneading of the dough is quite important because that's what gets the gluten to work, and that's what yields a nice softer, more elastic piece of dough or bread dough. Okay, tip that out. And then it's really just about working the dough into a nice elastic smooth dough. A little bit of stickiness to your hands is good. You don't want it to be too sticky obviously, but that is too much stick, so I may add a little bit of extra flour. Add that over, start working it into the dough. This recipe doesn't call for it, but if you are making this in future, you can always add some seeds like cumin seeds or fennel seeds, some herbs, chopped thyme or parsley also works really well. And kneading time is about 5 minutes, which seems long. Obviously, if you're doing it in a machine, you're not doing the hard work. The machine does it for you, but the kneading is, like I said, important. At least 5 to 8 minutes of kneading. Let's come off. A good way to knead sometimes is just to push back and pull it back again. Give this another 3 minutes or so for kneading. Like I said, a little bit of a stick is good, but you don't want your hands to look like that. That's a bit too much. It doesn't look like much, but the recipe yields about 8 to 10 naan breads depending on size, so it's a fair amount of bread that can be served with just about anything. I like it served with soups. I like to fill it with meat and make it a wrap. Something we eat often in our home. You just oil a clean bowl. What I like to use is just tissue paper, sometimes works quite well. Cover the base and the sides with a little bit of oil. Place the dough inside. And then you can either cover it with plastic cling film, remember to oil that then too. The alternative is just a clean tea towel goes on top in a warm place, not in direct sun, but just a warmer part of the kitchen. Tea towel on top, and just leave it to stand for about an hour, hour and a half for it to proof. And that's really just for the yeast to start working, and then from there we can start rolling out our longs. So while we're waiting for our bread to proof, I'm going to start with the soup, which is one of the longer cooking recipes today. You'll notice here that for the sweet potato, on your list it is to prep ahead, but it's important to peel it, put it into water, wrapped in the fridge, because it doesn't turn brown or black. Butternut wouldn't do it, so that's not necessary, but sweet potato definitely needs to be drained. I've cut mine into fair amount size blocks. I have a hand stick blender that I can use. At home, if you don't have a hand stick blender or a food processor, you can cut it into smaller blocks. I would say blocks of that size about, which is about a bite-sized block. And the same with the sweet potato. Onion, I've chopped fairly finely, and then obviously garlic as well. To make it easy at home, for your butternut, get the pips out of the butternut that way, and then using a spoon, you can just take the seeds out. And these seeds, I've said it in your recipe, you can rinse them, dry them, and then dry them in the oven. They work very nicely as a garnish or in salads like normal pumpkin seeds would. And that's it. So from there, obviously you can just peel and use the butternut that way. Okay, so onion, we're going to start with onion, obviously oil in the pot. Use a good 2 tablespoons at least. I just want to drain the sweet potato. Some of the water off it, it's not important, but just for the splattering of the oil, it's nice to get the majority of the water off. Obviously you can do this and drain it and just dry it at least 15 minutes prior to cooking. It's just the longer the sweet potato stands, the more brown it becomes, so it's just aesthetically not pleasing any longer. Okay, so my oil is in, heat that up. And for the cooking of the onion, it's also important to ensure that your pot or your pan is hot enough. You want a shh noise on the onions. Generally, if it's not, the product will take all of the oil in and it doesn't disperse into the rest of the dish. spices go, in your prep ahead list, I've said there that for things such as cinnamon, the ground ginger, nutmeg, try and measure it out before the start of cooking time, basically. So even if it's half a teaspoon, put it in a small bowl or a small plate, or put all of your spices together on one plate, measure it out. It just simplifies things. So once you start cooking, you can just add all of those 3 spices together. You don't have to waste time with finding a measuring spoon, measuring it out, and then adding it into the dish. Okay, so I'm going to put my onions in. Nice salt to the onions there. And I want to saute that for about 3 to 4 minutes while stirring. If you feel the pot is a bit dry, you can always add a further drizzle of oil. And with onion, we don't want the heat to be too high. Onion tends to burn very quickly. Once it burns and it goes black, you have a very bitter taste in the dish. My suggestion there is to rather start over than using the brown or very brown or black onion in the dish. For the spices, if you were to measure it out at home, I suggest doing it in a way that you can then, for example, just add everything into the dish at one time. So ground ginger, ground cinnamon, and then nutmeg. Be careful of nutmeg. It's also very bitter, but it adds a beautiful flavor to the dish. Seconds for that. Got some chopped garlic here that we'll use. One garlic clove should give you about half to 3/4 teaspoon of garlic. So just keep that in mind when doing the recipe. I do say garlic clove, so if you're chopping 3, that would be ideal. We're talking of teaspoons, which luckily I'm not. That's a good reference. 1 garlic clove equals about half to 3/4 teaspoon of chopped garlic. And with that, you can just then add all of the spices into the pot. I like to add a little bit of extra oil just to coat the sweet potato with butternut. Get it nicely coated in the spices. And then I'm going to add some chicken stock. You can use a chicken stock cube, you can use chicken stock powder. It really doesn't matter. The alternative is vegetable stock. Just about cover the vegetables in stock. Lid on and basically forget about it. Occasionally stirring. So to start with our next dish, which is second on your cooking steps, is the Asian style spring onion. It's like a topping. You can use it like a dip if you finely chop things, but here we're going to be using it as a topping on the naan bread. You can either, if you're using the halve it, chop it in any way you want to. I like to use a peeler if you have one, and then just start peeling the cucumber this way. The water base of the cucumber is in the center where the seeds are, so if you are peeling, you don't have to use the center part. So we don't want too much water in the topping. You can slice it thinly, like I said, you can cut it on the diagonal anyway, there's no rule. I'm going to place this into a bowl, sprinkle with some fine salt. You can also use coarse salt. That's what gets the water out. A bit of salt, and then some sugar. And again, I'm using caster sugar because it dissolves quicker. The only other way to make caster sugar is if you have a food processor, you can put normal white sugar in there and then just blitz it quickly to make it fine. Just leave aside. Mom, gelukkig is dit van de fabriek. Wat een goeie. Yes, Marcella. We're using some cucumber and then obviously also some spring onion. Again, with a spring onion, there's no certain rules how to cut or slice. I like to, because for texture and the way the dish looks in the end, to make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, I like to cut it in the length. And then just cut it down that way. Just as a garnish, it looks quite pretty when it's done down the length. And this is also something you can prep before the time. You don't have to do it a la minute or when you start cooking. I'm going to get a different bowl. And for this, we'll just put a little bit of water over to soften it slightly. And use the green parts. The green parts also look pretty on the plate. Spring onion we just leave aside to soak in the water for about 10 to 15 minutes. If you see there's a biggish piece, I like them fairly thinly sliced. Just don't slice any fingers. Avocado is the other ingredient we're using in this one. A nice ripe avocado. Take the end off. In a bowl, just by using a fork, you can just take the avocado out of the skin. As you can hear, it's school holidays. avocado out of the skin and then just mash it. You can either mash the avocado or cut it into little blocks. It really depends on you. There's no rules. The texture will come in with the cucumber and the spring onion. So mashing it or slicing it is entirely up to you. I like to also add some lemon juice. Rule of thumb, the avocado doesn't turn black, and you can leave it like that for at least an hour with just covered with a little bit of lemon juice. And it won't turn black like it normally does. Då sen inkappat så att det sa jag kan. Go. A fair amount of lemon juice. I mean, you don't need much, but at least half. The juice of about half a lemon should be fine. Salt, obviously avocado loves salt, so you can salt, and black pepper, I like pepper too. And then to this topping, there's also some toasted sesame seeds. You don't have to toast the sesame seeds, that's entirely up to you. It does add a nice smoky toasted flavor, but it's not important. I'll just quickly show you how to toast the seeds. You can just take a pan, on the heat, just get my sesame seeds. Black or white sesame seeds, it really doesn't matter. On a heat, and you'll notice really when you get that aroma of sesame seeds, but also when it starts popping in the pan. Okay, that's avocado done. I'm going to season with some salt and pepper. Oh, I can't. And move the sesame seeds around in the pan. You don't want them to burn, just want them to pop and then take them off the heat immediately. 1 or 2 have popped. Okay, I think these are ready. I don't want them to go too long. And you get that sort of scent of sesame. That I'd rather switch off. comes out of the cucumber. Cucumber done. The spring onion, 10 to 15 minutes. Just quickly drain that. I like to combine the spring onion, the cucumber, and then keeping the avocado separate. Okay, so for the spring onion, I like to add some chili flakes here, and I like a lot of chili. So dried chili flakes are fine. You can also use fresh chili, just nicely chopped, with the seeds, without the seeds. That's not a problem at all. And then the sesame seeds go in here as well. Let's check our soup. These we can just combine nicely, and then again you can add the cucumber to this, which I may actually do today. The spring onion will give it a nice crunch, as well as the sesame, and then you've got the softness of the avocado, so different textures with the naan bread. Wat maak jij? Hé? Wat doe jij? Je is nog steeds stuk. Huh? Wat is ook een leuke dag? Okay, our following topping or dip is zik. It's a Polish spread that's made with some cottage cheese, a little bit of natural yogurt, and some chives and radish. Radish is the one that gives beautiful texture. I've cut it fairly finely, as you can see. It also adds a nice color. And we're going to be using some salt and black pepper. If you like garlic, add a little bit of garlic. I love garlic, so to chop the chives, I just wanted to show you. Again, you can choose how big or how small you want it. It doesn't have to be finely chopped like the parsley. It also adds to the texture of the dish, so keep it to your liking. Okay, cottage cheese in a little bowl. I've chosen the chunky cottage cheese. I like the texture of it, but smooth is absolutely fine. And room temperature is important because that gets you to mix it nicely. If it's too hard or solidified, it's hard to combine everything together. A bit of yogurt. yogurt as well as cottage cheese likes salt, so add a generous amount of salt, but taste as you go. You don't want to over salt. Once the salt is in, there's no way of taking it out, so just taste as you go. And then some radish in. Salt, coarse salt, fine salt, doesn't matter. Some black pepper. I like a little bit of garlic in mine. Don't need much, half a clove. Definitely need a bit more salt. Let's clean this up. That's the Polish bread. That is also delicious mixed with some hot boiled potatoes. Our following dish is chermoula, which is a very delicious Moroccan type sauce, green in color. I like to add some chili flakes, red pepper flakes, so red chili flakes for a little bit of color. This also needs a bit of salt and pepper. The parsley I've chopped fairly finely with some fresh coriander. If you cannot find coriander, a good alternative is basil. That works just as well. If you can't find coriander or basil, only use parsley. This in a bowl, we're going to add a little bit of garlic. Again, I really like garlic. I like to add quite a fair amount of it. Ground coriander. Salt, and we'll be adding some lemon juice, like I said, chili flakes. Pepper. And then lemon juice. need much. And again, taste as you go, because the lemon is quite acidic. It will obviously need a fair amount of salt. Lemon juice. And then some chili flakes. That depends on the strength that you like. I like a lot of chili. Often I use fresh chili rather than dry. And then we'll add some olive oil. If you are, or if you want to, you can use a food processor if you have one. Put the ingredients in there, and then while the mixture is on, you can drizzle the olive oil in. But here we're doing it by hand today, so I'll just add the oil and just keep mixing. You don't want a dry chermoula, you want like a sauce, not something that's too dry. And then again, taste as you go and see if you have enough salt, enough of pepper. The lemon juice again can be quite acidic, so one that I've got is ground ginger. Ground ginger can be quite strong, so be careful with it. If you like fresh ginger, and if you have, you can always add that in later if you make this again. But ground ginger works just as well. Perfect. This is great as a sauce or a side. Goes well with meat. Even just toss through a little bit of pasta. It's really good. So that is chermoula done. Even gaan kijken of ik alles zie. Kan sugar, kan cinnamon. Okay, this is yes. Okay. So our next topping is like a sweet butter spread. I like to combine it with the savory of the naan. The kids will love it. It has some apple purity in it. There's some cinnamon, a little bit of nutmeg, and all combined together it makes a very nice sweeter spread than the savory spreads or toppings that we've made. And also if you want to freeze it in like a log and cut it later, you can use it melted over porridge. It's just a nice sweet alternative to savory toppings. So for the apple purity we need about 4 teaspoons, which I've basically measured out here. And again, your apple purity, you can always measure it out long before starting cooking and get that ready to save you time. A bit of ground cinnamon, a little bit of nutmeg, not too much. Nutmeg tends to get bitter fairly quickly. Like to start combining that. For the sweetness, and here you can use salted or unsalted butter. We're adding some caster sugar for sweetness. And again, like I said earlier, I like to use caster sugar because it's not as grainy under your teeth. But if you have normal white sugar, it's absolutely fine. And the important part here is to get your butter up to room temperature before making this, so you can combine it nicely. And getting it up to room temperature, you can, before your cook-along, take it out the night before, just put it somewhere in the house or in the kitchen, or take it out at least 2 hours prior to making. I like to add a little bit more cinnamon. Sweetness is fine, the taste of the cinnamon should be there. And then obviously you get that apple as well, which is lovely. What I like to do, and I'll show you, is after topping the naan with a butter spread, I like to slice an apple and then pour a little bit of lemon juice over. So any apple will do. I like Granny Smith because it's a little bit more tart in flavour. It's not as sweet. And you can leave the skin on or take the skin off. That's entirely up to you. And just make thin little strips from the apple. You can make blocks or slice blocks, it really doesn't matter. I like thin strips, it just looks nicely on top of the naan later if you are topping the naan with everything. So a bit of apple, I would use the whole apple, but this is just to show you. In a bowl, go, and then some lemon juice over, and the lemon juice is what prevents the apple from turning brown. Same as with the sweet potato, and the avocado obviously. Just stops it from turning brown too much, which also doesn't look so nice. Hi! A little bit of lemon juice over, and just toss it or coat it nicely in the lemon juice. And then you can just set it aside. Like I said, the lemon juice will prevent it from going brown. So it just looks prettier later. So that's that. That's your butter spread done. That goes with a little bit of apple topped on later. And if you want to, you had like nuts, you can add that on top after serving everything. I'll also show you when we top it later. It's nice to do the butter spread, some apple, and then a little bit of nuts on top. What is it, Sasa?
Masala? Yes. I'm going to share it with Nia.
You and Nia could each have your own piece.
Yeah.
I'm quickly going to just give you some. Just get some plates. Oh, we have some on that. Oops. You okay?
Yep.
Okay, so returning to our butternut soup, that's been cooking. The butternut and sweet potato is nice and soft. I've not seasoned yet. What I like to do is liquidize the soup first, or you can use a hand stick blender or a masher, or if you cut the vegetables fairly finely or grated the vegetables into the soup, there's no need to liquidize or to mash the soup. With mashing, it's just simple mashing of the vegetables, since they are nice and soft, they'll mash very easily into more like a chunky soup rather than smooth soup. Hand stick blender or a food processor will give you a nice smooth texture, whereas mashing will give you a chunkier texture. Okay, so with a hand stick blender it's a little bit easier. That's really, if you like a smoother soup, it's nice to use the hand stick blender. And this is where I like to season the soup. Pot. And depending on thickness, that really depends on you. I like a thicker soup rather than too watery. This to me is perfect. A little bit of salt into that, and a good grind of black pepper. You can also use white pepper. And for a nice creamy texture, we're going to swirl some buttermilk through, but that will do once we've played the soup. And that's the soup done. Serve with naan bread, it's delicious, or any other bread. bread. It's now proofed nicely. I had it in the oven for a short while, and then, but I like to do it the old method, was just a tea towel over, standing somewhere where it's nice and warm. We're going to have to roll that out and knead it out. Where did I put my flour? There we go. So you need a fair amount of flour, dust it on a clean work surface. Just put a bit of flour out like this. And then just tip dough out. So it has a nice stick to it. It's absolutely fine. You can just give it a few. A little bit of flour in there. Okay, for the naan, you can just break off pieces about that size, and then on a less floured part of the work surface, using the palm of your hand, just start rolling it into little balls. And before doing this, you can obviously, if you're making this again and you'd like to add some fresh herbs or seeds, you can do that now before rolling it into balls. That's fine. Just add a little bit of flour. And size depends on you. Depends also on the size of your pan, because it goes into the pan to cook. And once these are rolled, leave them aside for a few minutes, just 5 minutes or so, they can expand a little again, and from there we use a rolling pin to roll them out. Okay, that's done. Again, just cover it lightly with a tea towel and just leave it for, like I said, about 5 minutes before we roll it out. our naan breads, we're going to roll it out using a rolling pin. Just flour nicely. And the shape doesn't matter. Some people like it longer, some people like it round, some people like it an oval shape. You'll notice that they sort of shrink back, and then once they get their stretch, it will stay. Just make sure you have a nicely floured work surface. And also just make sure that you have enough of naan for all of your toppings and sides. That's one. Thickness also, it's a personal thing. I like it thinner in the pan. You'll see later with the heat it creates nice bubbles. They do puff out a little bit, so get it thinner rather than thicker. You don't want a very thick raw naan. Flour. Allemaal doen dus vandaag van die toppings. Put enough of flour on, you can just stack them like that before putting it into the pan. Size. So yolk, carefree, lekker buiter word. Of course, a wine bottle also works well if you don't have a rolling pin. A wine bottle will work just as well. a medium heat, not too high. You want a nice golden color on the naan, and it will pop a little bit. If there's a little bit of blackness, it doesn't matter. You'll see the bubbles will turn golden and black. Color is good. Once it bubbles on the first side, flip it over and then cook the other side for a further minute or so. I do say in your recipe you're welcome to use oil in the pan. I like using a dry pan. Okay, so pour our naan into a dry pan. And just give it some time. You'll notice nice bubbles forming on the surface of the naan. And once it's covered in bubbles, just check the bottom every now and again to see that it's not burning. Flip it over and then cook it for a further about a minute on the other side. I like to stack them. What you can do is, if you want, if you like butter, you can rub each with butter in between. If you're making it later, you can also just a little bit of olive oil and then just stack them nicely. Wrap it in tin foil, and that will help you later if you want to heat it up. You can just put the whole package of naans that's in tin foil quickly into the oven and heat it up that way. Okay, so there you can see some bubbles forming on the top. And there's a little bit of color there. I would like it to go a little bit longer. And then we'll flip it over and cook the other side. Roll it over the way. There we go. See, they puff up quite nicely. Let's flip over. Minute longer. Gaan we hier gaan. Naan, perfectly cooked. And with all 6 or 8 or 10, however many you've made, the same process. Just into the pan, wait until the bubbles form, flip it over and cook the other side. Again, beautiful little bubbles forming on the surface. go. Go. So for the soup, I just ladle some into a bowl. As you can see, I like it nice and thick. And with that, crumbled feta, and just crumbled on top. And then from that spring onion that you may still have some left of, you can just chop a few and just put it on top for some greenery. And that's it. Then for the naans, it really depends on you how you want to serve it. I like it if you're serving it family style. Do it. You can make a few of them, put it in the center of the table, and everybody can just pull off or top the toppings as they please. If you are going to serve it in the center of the table, you want to put the toppings on first. Then this is the sweet cinnamon butter that I like to just spread on top, and the amount depends on you. It's nice and buttery, cinnamony, sweet. Just have this lovely different flavor, which could be the dessert to your naan lunch or dinner. And then that apple that hasn't discolored yet, lemon juice worked really well, just in the center. There we go. That little bit of juice I'll just drizzle over like that. And that's that one done. Chamula, I prefer to serve the naan separate to the chamula and just serve it in a little bowl, and then you can just tear the naan bread off and basically take it from there and eat it that way, or just spoon a little bit onto the plate and then dip your naan bread through. That's entirely up to you again, or just spoon a few dollops of chamula onto the naan bread and then drizzle some of that lovely sauce over. Make it nice and rustic. And you can still tear the naan bread from there to enjoy it that way, or serve it as a side dish to a piece of chicken or a piece of fish. I like to sometimes just roll it up and just eat it that way, almost like a wrap. That's the chamula. See, naan. Definitely one of my favorites. I like to just spread and keep your avocado not too fine, nice and chunky, it's nice, it just adds texture. Spread that on top, and then all this lovely cucumber and spring onion goes on top with that chili. And sesame seeds. Nothing else is needed here. Go. For the zik, which is the Polish topping, which also is one that I enjoy a lot. Also best on top. The alternative is on the side, just pull the naan bread through, tear it up, put it through. And again, if you are at home and you're making this again in future, toss through some boiled baby potatoes or boiled potatoes. It's really delicious. And then you will have some spring onion left. That goes really well here. So some of that spring onion, again just slice, if you want to, thin slices. Use it as a bit of a garnish on top. Just to add a little bit of color, a nice touch to the final dish. You may find that you need some salt or pepper, and the black pepper will also lift it a little bit, or add almost like a garnish. Add a little bit of black pepper on top, which we can do. There we go. That's a zik naan. Perfect. So, here is your Olympic themed dinner. I hope you enjoy it. Try and enjoy it with your family. Get the family involved. Get everybody to do something. Follow your cooking steps. Let someone do the cooking of the soup. The other one makes a dressing or a topping or roll the naan out. Make it a family affair. And I hope you make it again in the future. Thank you so much.